The metal walls of Station Nexus 7 hummed with life as hundreds of beings from different worlds moved through its corridors. The station floated in deep space, far from any sun or planet. It was built as a meeting place where aliens from across the galaxy could gather and talk. Today was special. Today, leaders from 12 different species had come together for an important meeting. Ambassador Tae-hyun walked down the long hallway toward the council chamber. He wore a simple black suit that marked him as Earth's representative. His shoes clicked softly on the floor with each step. Behind him, holding his hand tightly, walked his daughter Hana. She was only 6 years old, with bright, curious eyes that took in everything around her. Hana had never been to space before. Her mother had died 3 months ago from a sickness that human doctors could not cure. Tae-hyun had no one to leave her with on Earth, so he brought her along. He hoped the trip would help take her mind off the sadness. She seemed excited about seeing aliens and spaceships, though she was very quiet most of the time now. They passed by a group of tall blue aliens with 4 arms. Hana stared at them with wide eyes. The aliens noticed her looking and made friendly clicking sounds. One of them waved all 4 hands at once. Hana smiled a little and waved back with her one small hand. "Remember what I told you?" Tae-hyun said gently to his daughter. "You need to stay close to me during the meeting. The council chamber has a special area where you can sit and draw. Can you do that for me?" Hana nodded. She carried a small backpack filled with coloring books and crayons. "I'll be good, Papa," she said quietly. They reached the entrance to the council chamber. The doors were massive, made of some kind of shimmering metal that changed colors. 2 guards stood on either side. One was covered in thick armor and had 6 legs. The other looked like it was made entirely of rocks that somehow moved and breathed. The guard scanned Tae-hyun's identification card and let them through. The doors opened with a soft whoosh of air. Inside, the council chamber was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Hana could barely see the top. In the center of the room sat a huge circular table. Around it were seats of all different shapes and sizes, made to fit the many different types of aliens who used them. Some aliens needed seats filled with water. Others needed perches like birds. One species required seats that hung from the ceiling because they could not stand on solid ground. The station builders had thought of everything. Tae-hyun guided Hana to a small observation area behind his seat. It had a comfortable chair, a table, and large windows that looked out into space. "Stay here, sweetheart. If you need anything, just call me quietly, okay?" "Okay, Papa." Hana climbed into the chair and opened her coloring book. She had a picture of flowers to color. Tae-hyun took his place at the council table. Around him sat the representatives of 11 other species. To his left was Ambassador Krell from the Quillian Collective. Krell looked like a giant porcupine that stood on 2 legs. Sharp quills covered his entire body, and they rattled when he moved or got upset. To Tae-hyun's right sat Representative Thes from the Lithian Empire. Thes was made of living crystal that sparkled in the light. She did not have a mouth that moved, but her thoughts became sounds through a device attached to her body. Other aliens filled the remaining seats. There were beings that looked like giant insects, others that seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal, and some that Tae-hyun could not even begin to describe. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. There was still so much they did not understand. The meeting began. A hologram appeared above the center of the table, showing a region of space filled with red and purple clouds. It was called the Crimson Nebula, and it contained rare minerals that many species needed for their technology. "We must discuss the mining rights immediately," said Ambassador Krell. His quills rattled with agitation. "My people have claimed this region for over 200 years. We cannot simply abandon it now. Your claim is based on old agreements that are no longer valid," replied Representative Thes. Her crystal body pulsed with light as she spoke. "The Lithian Empire has the military strength to secure and properly manage the nebula's resources." Tae-hyun listened carefully. The real problem was not about mining rights at all. Everyone in the room knew the truth, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The Crimson Nebula had a much bigger problem than competing claims. Finally, a small alien that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. "We are all avoiding the real issue. Vexthor has awakened. The dragon is there, in the nebula. We detected its energy signature 3 days ago." The entire chamber fell silent. Even Hana looked up from her coloring, sensing that something important had been said. Stellar dragons were legends, ancient beings that existed long before any of the current species had traveled to space. They were supposed to be the most dangerous creatures in the entire galaxy. Dragons could grow as large as starships. They breathed plasma hot enough to melt asteroids. They could survive in the vacuum of space and travel between stars, using abilities that scientists still did not understand. Most importantly, dragons were said to be impossible to communicate with. Every species that had tried to make contact with a dragon had failed. Many of those attempts had ended in the complete destruction of entire fleets. "Then we abandoned the nebula," said Ambassador Krell. "No amount of minerals is worth facing a dragon." "My people do not run from threats," said Representative Thess proudly. "The Lithian military has weapons that can handle any creature." "You are a fool if you believe that," hissed an insect-like alien from across the table. "Stellar dragons have destroyed entire civilizations. Your weapons will mean nothing." The argument grew louder. More aliens joined in, their voices rising in clicks, whistles, buzzes, and electronic sounds. The translation devices worked hard to turn all the different languages into words that everyone could understand. Taehyun raised his hand. "Perhaps there is another option. What if we tried to communicate with the dragon peacefully? Humanity could attempt to make first contact." The chamber erupted in noise. Several aliens laughed. Others made sounds of disbelief. "Humans," said Ambassador Krell. "Your species has barely been in space for half a century. You know nothing of stellar dragons. You would all die." "Every species has tried to talk to dragons," added Representative Thess. "All have failed. What makes humans think they would succeed?" Taehyun wanted to explain his reasoning, but the arguing grew too loud. Everyone had an opinion, and no one wanted to listen to anyone else. While the adults argued about dragons and mining rights and military strength, Hana finished coloring her flowers. She put down her crayons and looked out the large windows beside her chair. Space was so beautiful. She could see distant stars twinkling like tiny diamonds. Some were white, others were blue or red or yellow. Near the station, she could see other spaceships coming and going, their engines leaving trails of light. On one of the monitors built into the wall, Hana noticed something interesting. The screen showed a live picture from somewhere else in space. She could see the red and purple clouds that the adults had been talking about. The crimson nebula was very pretty, she thought. Then she saw something moving in the clouds, something big, something that glowed. Hana pressed her face closer to the screen, watching with fascination. Whatever it was, it looked beautiful and scary at the same time. It moved like it was swimming through the colored clouds, circling around and around. The adults continued their loud argument. No one noticed the little girl staring at the screen. No one saw her small hand reaching out to touch the image of the creature in the nebula. Hana smiled. She did not know what the glowing thing was, but something about it made her feel less sad than she had felt in months. It reminded her of the stories her mother used to tell her before bedtime, stories about magical creatures from long ago. She wished she could see it with her own eyes instead of just on a screen. The argument in the council chamber had been going on for nearly an hour, when reality itself began to tear apart. It started with a sound. Not a normal sound that traveled through air, but something that every being on the station felt in their bones. It was like the universe was being pulled in two different directions at once. The metal walls vibrated. The lights flickered. Equipment started beeping with warning signals. Then the alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed throughout Station Nexus 7. An automated voice spoke in every language at once, creating a terrible chorus of warnings. Emergency, emergency, spatial anomaly detected. All personnel to emergency stations, emergency, emergency. Ambassador Krell jumped from his seat, his quills standing straight up in fear. Representative Thess's crystal body began flashing rapidly. All around the table, aliens were scrambling, knocking over chairs, rushing toward the exits. Taehyun's first thought was of his daughter. He spun around to look at the observation area. But Hana was not in her chair. The coloring book lay open on the table, crayons scattered everywhere. His daughter was gone. Hana, Taehyun shouted again. His heart pounded in his chest. Where had she gone? When had she left? He had been so focused on the meeting that he had not been watching her carefully enough. He ran from the council chamber into the corridor outside. Aliens were running in every direction, panicking. The station shook again, harder this time. Taehyun grabbed a passing station worker. Have you seen a small human child? A little girl. The worker, some kind of blob-like creature, simply gurgled in fear and pulled away, rushing down the hallway. Security Chief Jinwoo came running up, his uniform covered in weapon belts and communication devices. Jinwoo was a human, one of the few who worked on the station. He was a big man with a serious face and quick movements. Ambassador, we need to get you to the escape pods immediately. I cannot leave. My daughter is missing. I have to find her. Jinwoo spoke into his communication device. All security teams, we are looking for a human child, 6 years old, female, last seen in the council chamber. Find her and bring her to the emergency shelters immediately. The station shook violently. Both men had to grab the wall to keep from falling. Through the nearest window, they could see something impossible happening outside. Space was opening up. A crack had formed in the darkness, as if someone had taken a knife and cut through the fabric of reality itself. Through the crack, they could see swirling colors that did not belong in the normal universe. Reds and purples and colors that had no names mixed together in a spinning vortex. And something was coming through. First came the heat. The temperature in the station began rising rapidly. Metal walls that had been cool to the touch now felt warm. Then hot. Alarms added new warnings to the chaos. Critical heat levels detected. Emergency cooling systems activated. Then they saw the scales. They emerged through the crack in space slowly, each one as large as a transport ship. The scales glowed with inner fire, shifting from deep red to bright orange to white-hot yellow. They reflected the light of distant stars and created their own terrible radiance. Behind the scales came more body, a massive neck, thick as a building, covered in the same glowing scales. A head that was bigger than some of the ships docked at the station. And eyes, enormous eyes that burned with an intelligence older than most civilizations. Vexthor had arrived. The dragon finished pulling itself through the spatial tear and floated beside Station Nexus 7. It was hard to understand the true size of the creature. Its body seemed to go on forever. Its wings, when they unfurled, blocked out entire sections of the starfield behind it. The dragon's scales pulsed with energy. Waves of radiation poured off its body, making all the station's instruments go crazy. Screens filled with static. Communications cut out. Even the artificial gravity flickered for a moment, making everyone feel weightless before it kicked back on. Weapon systems online, Jinwoo said into his device, though his voice shook. He had never seen anything like this. No human had. Target the creature and prepare to fire. But as soon as the station's defensive weapons powered up, they began to melt. The dragon's heat was so intense that it destroyed the weapons without even trying. Metal turned soft, then liquid, then vaporized into gas. The station's most powerful defenses became useless in seconds. Through the windows, they watched as the dragon moved closer. Its massive head turned slowly, scanning the station with those terrible burning eyes. Each eye was like looking into the heart of a star. The dragon seemed to be searching for something. Ambassador Krell ran past, his quills clattering against the walls in his panic.
We are all going to die.
The dragon will destroy us all. Other aliens followed, pushing and shoving to reach the escape pods. But Taehyun could not think about escape. Somewhere in this station was his daughter, and he had to find her before something terrible happened. I am going to the observation gallery, Taehyun said to Jinwoo. That is where children usually go. All the windows and screens. I will come with you, Jinwoo replied. He had given up trying to coordinate a defense. There was no defense against a stellar dragon. He had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. Dragons could not be stopped by weapons or walls. They were forces of nature as unstoppable as a supernova. The two men ran through the shaking corridors. They passed more panicking aliens, more warning lights, more automated voices screaming about danger. The station's emergency systems were completely overwhelmed. The observation gallery was on the outer ring of the station. It was a popular place for visitors who wanted to look at space through the reinforced windows that lined the walls. Normally, it was peaceful and quiet. Now it was a nightmare. The dragon had positioned itself directly outside the observation gallery, its massive body pressed against the windows which were beginning to crack under the pressure and heat. The reinforced glass was supposed to withstand meteor strikes and weapons fire, but it had never been designed to hold back a creature made of living fire. Spiderweb cracks spread across the windows. The glass groaned and creaked. Any moment the entire section might blow out into space, and there, standing alone in the center of the gallery, was Hana. "Hana!" Taehyun screamed. He ran toward his daughter, but Jinwoo grabbed him and held him back. "If those windows break, the vacuum will pull you both out," Jinwoo said. "The emergency fields will seal the breach, but not fast enough to save anyone standing there." Taehyun struggled against Jinwoo's grip, but the security chief was much stronger. All Taehyun could do was watch helplessly as his daughter stood facing the dragon through the failing windows. Hana did not look scared. She stood very still, her small face tilted up to look at the enormous creature outside. She had pressed one small hand against the hot glass, her palm flat against the surface. The dragon's eye, vast and burning, focused on the little girl. The pupil, a vertical slit like a cat's eye but as tall as a house, contracted as it stared at her. The dragon tilted its head, moving slowly, carefully. Other station personnel had arrived now. A dozen security guards stood with weapons drawn, though everyone knew the weapons were useless. Several council members watched from a safe distance. Even in the midst of their panic, they could not help but witness what was happening. A little human child was standing face to face with the deadliest creature in the galaxy. The cracks in the window grew worse. Warning alarms screamed louder. The automated safety systems were preparing to seal the gallery off completely, which would mean sealing Hana in with the breaking window and the vacuum of space beyond. "We have to do something," Taehyun begged. Tears ran down his face. "Please, we have to save her." But there was nothing anyone could do. The dragon was too close. The window was failing. Moving forward would mean death. Trying to shoot the dragon would only make it angry, if such a creature even understood anger. They could only watch. Hana stood on her tiptoes, pressing her hand harder against the glass. She appeared to be trying to reach higher, as if she wanted to touch the dragon's eye that stared down at her. Then something impossible happened. The dragon moved its head back slightly. With a sound like thunder mixed with wind, it made a noise. Not a roar or a scream, but something softer. Almost curious. The window finally shattered. Emergency fields activated instantly, creating a barrier of energy where the glass had been. The fields were designed to hold back space's vacuum for a few minutes while sections could be sealed off. They shimmered like soap bubbles, distorting the view. But the dragon did not attack. It did not breathe fire or plasma. It did not try to push through into the station. Instead, its massive head phased through the emergency barrier, as if the energy field was not even there. The dragon's snout, still glowing with heat but somehow not setting off any more alarms, moved through the barrier like it was passing through water. The dragon's head was now inside the station, inside the observation gallery, mere feet from where Hana stood. Everyone held their breath. This was the end. The dragon would incinerate the child, then destroy the entire station. This was how all the stories went. Dragons brought only death. But Hana smiled. She reached up with both hands now, stretching as high as her small arms would go. Her fingers spread wide, reaching toward the dragon's snout that hung in the air above her. The dragon lowered its head. Slowly, carefully, like it was trying not to frighten, Hana stroked the dragon's snout with both hands, her movements gentle and careful. The scales felt warm under her palms like sun-heated stone, but they did not burn her. She traced the patterns in the scales with her fingers, following the lines where different colors met and blended together. Vexthor remained perfectly still. The dragon's eye, still focused on the small child, had stopped burning quite so brightly. The terrible heat that had been radiating from its body continued to fade. The air around them was still warm, but no longer dangerously hot. The metal walls of the observation gallery stopped glowing red and began to return to their normal silver color. Behind them, Taehyun finally stopped trying to pull free from Jinwoo's grip. The security chief slowly released him, both men standing frozen in amazement. They watched as Hana continued to pet the dragon like it was a large dog. "This is not possible," whispered Representative Thess. Her crystal body had stopped flashing in alarm and now pulsed with a steady, confused rhythm. Dragons do not interact peacefully with any species. Ever. In all of recorded history, this has never happened. Ambassador Krell's quills had flattened against his body. He made a low whistling sound, which in his language meant something like, "I do not understand what I am seeing. The human child should be dead. We should all be dead. Why are we not dead?" No one had an answer. Hana looked up at the dragon's eye and smiled. "My name is Hana," she said. "What is your name? Can you talk?" The dragon made a sound. It was deep and rumbling, like rocks grinding together deep underground, or like the sound of thunder that goes on and on without stopping. The sound was so low that everyone could feel it in their chests as much as hear it with their ears. The station's translation systems tried to make sense of the sound. Speakers throughout the gallery crackled and popped, unable to process what the dragon was saying. If it was saying anything at all. The systems had no reference for dragon language, but Hana seemed to understand something in the sound. She nodded as if the dragon had answered her question. "Vexthor, that is a pretty name. Are you a boy dragon or a girl dragon?" Another rumbling sound. This one was different from the first, though most of the watching aliens could not tell the difference. To them it all sounded like thunder. "A boy dragon," Hana said, nodding again. "I thought so. You have a boy voice." Taehyun took a careful step forward. Jinwoo put a hand on his shoulder, ready to pull him back but did not stop him. Taehyun moved slowly, not wanting to startle the dragon or his daughter. "Hana," he said softly, "Sweetheart, I need you to come to Papa now." Very slowly, very carefully, Hana turned to look at her father. "But Papa, I am talking to Vexthor. He came to visit. It would be rude to leave." "I know, sweetheart, but—" The dragon made another sound, this one sharper, more alert. Its eye shifted from Hana to Taehyun. The adult human froze, suddenly feeling like a mouse being watched by an eagle. Even though the dragon's heat had faded, its power was still obvious. This was a creature that could end his life with a thought, but the dragon did not attack. It simply looked at Taehyun for a long moment, then returned its attention to Hana. Hana turned back to the dragon. "That is my papa. His name is Taehyun. He is very nice, but he worries a lot. My mama died, so now it is just me and Papa. He gets scared sometimes that something bad will happen to me too." The dragon's eye seemed to soften somehow. It made a quieter rumbling sound, one that almost sounded sad. "You understand," Hana said, her own voice becoming quieter. "You have lost people too, have you not?" The dragon slowly closed its enormous eye, then opened it again. A blink, but one that took several seconds to complete. It lowered its head even more, until its snout was resting on the floor of the gallery. Now Hana did not have to reach up anymore. She could simply place her hands on the dragon's nose. She did, pressing her palms flat against the warm scales. Then she leaned forward and wrapped her small arms around the dragon's snout as much as she could, which was not very much considering how large the snout was. She hugged the dragon. Several of the watching aliens made sounds of shock. Ambassador Krell's quill stood up again, though this time more from surprise than fear. Representative Thess's crystal body flashed so brightly that everyone had to look away for a moment. The dragon made another sound. This one was different from all the others. It was still deep and rumbling, but there was a quality to it that had not been there before. It sounded almost like purring, like a satisfied cat, but so much deeper and louder that it made the entire station vibrate gently. Hana stepped back and looked up at the dragon's eye again. "You are lonely. You have been lonely for a very long time." The dragon blinked again. Scientists and researchers who had been watching through remote cameras immediately began analyzing what they were seeing. This was the first time anyone had witnessed a stellar dragon communicating with another being. Countless sensors recorded every sound, every movement, every change in energy levels. One of the scientists, a tall alien with skin like tree bark, spoke into a recording device. "The child appears to be communicating with the dragon on an emotional level, rather than a linguistic one. The dragon's bioenergy patterns are showing changes consistent with recognition, as if it is responding to the child's emotional state." Another scientist, this one floating in a bubble of water, added to the recording. The dragon's body temperature has decreased by 70% since contact with the child began. Heat radiation is now at levels safe for most species. This contradicts everything we know about stellar dragons. They are supposed to be creatures of constant fire. Back in the observation gallery, Hana was talking to Vex Thor about her life. She told him about Earth, about the school she went to, about her best friend who liked to draw pictures of stars. She told him about her mother, about how sick she had been, about how much Hana missed her. Mama used to tell me stories before bed, Hana said. Stories about dragons and princesses and knights. But her dragons were always scary in the stories. They guarded treasure and breathed fire at anyone who came close. I do not think those stories were right. I think dragons are just lonely and misunderstood. The dragon made that purring sound again, stronger this time. The vibration made dust fall from the ceiling and caused the lights to flicker. But it was not a threatening vibration. Everyone watching somehow understood that the dragon was expressing contentment, maybe even happiness. Hana yawned. The excitement and stress of the day were catching up with her. I am getting sleepy, she told Vex Thor. But I do not want you to leave yet. Will you stay a little longer? The dragon blinked slowly. It shifted its head slightly, adjusting its position so that its snout was at a better angle for Hana to lean against. An invitation. Without any fear, Hana sat down on the floor and leaned back against the dragon's snout. The warm scales made a comfortable backrest. She closed her eyes, a small smile on her face. Taehyun started forward, but Jinwoo stopped him again. Wait, the security chief whispered. Look. They watched as the dragon very carefully, very gently adjusted its breathing. Its massive body rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm. The air flowing from its nostrils was warm and carried a strange but not unpleasant smell, like minerals heated by the sun. Hana's breathing began to match the dragon's rhythm. Within minutes, she had fallen asleep, still leaning against the ancient creature's snout. The dragon watched her sleep. Its eye remained open, but the intensity had faded to something gentler. It looked almost protective. She has done what no one has ever done before, Representative Thess said quietly. Her voice held wonder, not disbelief. She has made contact with a stellar dragon. A real meaningful contact. Ambassador Krell moved closer, though he kept a respectful distance from the dragon. How? Human children are not telepathic. They do not have any special abilities that we know of. What makes this one different? An elderly alien that looked like a very large insect with rainbow-colored wings stepped forward. This was Scholar Mirai from the Velkari species. She was known as one of the galaxy's greatest experts on ancient history. She had been silent until now, but her eyes had been studying everything carefully. The child is not different, Mirai said in her clicking, whistling voice. We are what is different. We are what has changed. We have forgotten what the dragons are. What do you mean? Asked Jinwoo. Mirai gestured toward the sleeping child and the watchful dragon. Stellar dragons are not mindless beasts. They never were. Our ancestors knew this. There are records, very old records that most species have sealed away or forgotten. Records from a time before the Great War. The Great War? Taehyun asked. He had moved to stand beside Jinwoo, his eyes never leaving his sleeping daughter. It happened over 20,000 years ago. Mirai explained. A conflict that involved most of the major civilizations of that time. The dragons were caught in the middle. They were driven away, scattered across the galaxy. Since then, they have been alone. Waiting. Waiting for what? Representative Thess asked. Waiting for a species that did not carry the old hatreds. A species that did not remember the war. A species that could see them as they truly are. Hana slept for nearly an hour, curled up against Vex Thor's snout. During that time, the dragon did not move. It barely seemed to breathe. It simply watched over the sleeping child with an expression that might have been tenderness if such a word could apply to a creature made of scales and fire. The observation gallery had become crowded. More council members had arrived after the initial panic faded. Scientists from a dozen different species set up monitoring equipment, trying to record and understand what they were witnessing. News of what happened spread quickly through the station, and soon beings from every corner of the galaxy were watching the footage. A human child sleeping peacefully next to a stellar dragon. The image seemed impossible, yet there it was, recorded from multiple angles with multiple types of sensors. There could be no doubt that it was real. Scholar Mirai had been accessing the station's database for the past hour, pulling up old files that had not been viewed in centuries. She projected them as holograms so others could see. The images showed ancient ruins covered in carvings and symbols. "These are from the Temple of First Light," Mirai explained, pointing to one of the holograms with her delicate leg. "Built over 23,000 years ago by a civilization that no longer exists. Look at these carvings." The images showed dragons similar in shape to Vexthor but smaller, flying alongside ships from ancient times. In some carvings, dragons and aliens stood side by side. In others, they appeared to be working together, building structures or exploring new worlds. "The ancient civilizations lived with dragons," Mirai continued. "They were partners, companions. The dragons helped them travel between stars before modern engines were invented. They shared knowledge and resources. For thousands of years there was peace." "What happened?" asked Taehyun. He stood close enough to the sleeping Hana that he could reach her quickly if needed, but far enough back not to disturb the dragon. Mirai pulled up another set of holograms. These showed different images: war, destruction, dragons fighting against massive fleets of ships, cities burning, worlds torn apart. "The Great War," she said sadly. "No one knows exactly how it started. The records from that time are incomplete or deliberately destroyed. But the result is clear. The allied civilizations turned against the dragons. They saw the dragons' power as a threat. They feared what the dragons might do if they ever became hostile. So they attacked first," Jinwoo said, his jaw tight with anger at the stupidity of it. "Yes, and the dragons fought back. The war lasted for 3 centuries. By the end, both sides had suffered terrible losses. Entire species went extinct. Planets became uninhabitable. And the dragons, those who survived, left. They scattered across the galaxy, hiding in nebulas and remote regions of space. They stopped communicating with any civilization." Representative Thess moved closer to the holograms, her crystal body reflecting the ancient images. "But why did they attack ships that tried to contact them? Why did they destroy fleets that came too close?" Mirai changed the hologram again. This time it showed star charts with markers indicating where dragon sightings had been reported over the past 20,000 years. "Look at the patterns. Every recorded dragon attack happened after ships fired weapons first, or attempted to capture the dragon, or invaded their territory with military forces. The dragons were defending themselves." Ambassador Krell made a whistling sound of realization. "We always assumed they were the aggressors. But they were only protecting themselves from us." "Exactly. For 20,000 years, dragons have been alone. They remember what the galaxy's civilizations did to them. They remember the betrayal. They could not trust anyone." Miri turned to look at the sleeping child and the watchful dragon. "Until now. Until a species appeared that knew nothing of the old war. Until a child showed them that not all beings in the galaxy were their enemies." Scientists continued monitoring the energy patterns flowing between Hana and Vexthor. One of them, a small alien whose body was made of interlocking geometric shapes, was particularly excited by what the sensors showed. "Look at this," the scientist said, projecting data into the air where everyone could see. "These are bio-emotional resonance patterns. The child and the dragon are sharing emotional states. When the child's brainwaves show contentment, the dragon's energy signature shifts to match. When the dragon purrs, the child's heartbeat becomes more relaxed. It is a feedback loop," said another scientist. "They are unconsciously synchronizing with each other. We have seen similar patterns in bonded pairs of some species, but never between 2 completely different types of beings." "Never between a human and a dragon," added a third researcher. Jinwoo was coordinating with security teams throughout the station. The initial panic had faded, but they needed to be ready if the situation changed. He spoke quietly into his communication device, then listened to reports from other sections of the station. "Sir," one of his team members said through the device, "we are detecting strange readings from the Crimson Nebula. Multiple energy signatures similar to the one here. I think there are more dragons coming." Jinwoo's expression hardened. He walked over to where Taehyun stood and shared the information quietly. The ambassador's face went pale. "How many?" Taehyun asked. "At least 5, possibly more. The sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings through the nebula's interference. More dragons. If one dragon had been enough to terrify the entire station, what would 5 do? Or more?" Mirai had overheard the conversation. She did not look frightened, though. Instead, she looked thoughtful. They are coming to see for themselves. Vexthor must have communicated with them somehow. They want to know if what he found is real. If the galaxy has truly changed, Hana began to stir. Her eyes fluttered open and she yawned, stretching her small arms. She looked up at Vexthor, who was still watching her carefully, and smiled. Did I fall asleep? I am sorry. That was rude. The dragon made a soft rumbling sound that might have been amusement. Hana sat up and rubbed her eyes. Then she noticed all the people who had gathered in the observation gallery. There were so many more than before. She waved at them shyly. Hello. Several of the aliens waved back, still amazed that the child was so calm. Hana stood up and turned to face Vexthor properly. She had to tilt her head all the way back to see his eye. Vexthor, I need to tell you something important. The dragon tilted its massive head, listening. I am very happy that I met you, Hana said. You are wonderful and beautiful and kind. I hope we can be friends. But I need to go back to my papa now. He has been very worried about me, and I do not want him to worry anymore. The dragon was silent for a moment. Then it made a long, low rumbling sound. Even without translation devices, somehow everyone understood that the dragon was sad about this. Hana reached up and placed her hand on the dragon's snout one more time. You do not have to be lonely anymore. I will visit you again. I promise. And maybe other people will want to meet you too, if you want to meet them. Then, standing on her tiptoes and stretching as high as she could reach, Hana pressed a gentle kiss to the dragon's scales. Right between its nostrils and the spot where the scales were the warmest and glowed with the softest amber light. The entire observation gallery fell absolutely silent. Every being, every camera, every sensor focused on this single moment. A human child kissing a stellar dragon, an act of pure affection toward the galaxy's most feared creature. Vexthor's eye closed slowly. The sound it made was like wind through canyons, like waves on an ocean, like the deep singing of the planet itself. It was a sound of joy mixed with ancient sorrow finally being released. When the dragon opened its eye again, something had changed in its gaze. The old wariness was still there, the memory of betrayal and loss. But there was also something new. Hope. The possibility that maybe after 20,000 years of loneliness, things could be different. Vexthor began to pull its head back through the emergency barrier. The energy field shimmered as the dragon's snout phased through it. The massive head emerged outside the station, back into the vacuum of space where the dragon belonged. But it did not leave immediately. Vexthor floated there, looking through the damaged windows at the small child who waved goodbye. Hana pressed her hand against what remained of the window, and the dragon moved one of its eyes closer as if trying to memorize her face. Then, with a movement too quick for something so large, Vexthor turned and flew away from the station. Its wings caught light that should not have been there, creating trails of color through space. Within seconds, the dragon had opened another spatial tear and disappeared through it, heading back toward the Crimson Nebula. Hana lowered her hand and turned to face her father. Taehyun rushed forward and swept her up into his arms, hugging her tightly. Hana, sweetheart, you scared me so much. Do not ever do that again. I am sorry, Papa, but I am not sorry I met Vexthor. He needed a friend. Taehyun held his daughter close, tears running down his face. He did not know whether to laugh or cry or both. His 6-year-old daughter had just made first contact with a stellar dragon and survived. No more than survived. She had made a connection that everyone else thought was impossible. Around them, the observation gallery erupted with activity. Scientists were shouting to each other, comparing data. Council members were arguing about what this meant for Galactic. 3 days passed after Vexthor's first visit to Station Nexus 7. 3 days that changed the galaxy forever. The news spread like wildfire across thousands of worlds. Every species, every civilization heard the story of the human child who kissed a dragon and lived. The footage was replayed billions of times. People watched in amazement as little Hana petted Vexthor, talked to him, fell asleep against him. They watched as she kissed his scales and said goodbye. Some did not believe it was real at first. They claimed the footage must be fake, created with special effects. But too many witnesses had been there. Too many sensors had recorded the event from too many angles. The data did not lie. It had really happened. On Earth, Hana became instantly famous. News reporters camped outside her home. Government officials wanted to meet her. Scientists wanted to study her. Everyone wanted to know how a 6-year-old child had done what trained diplomats and warriors had never managed. But Hana was not on Earth. She was still on Station Nexus 7 with her father, waiting, because the dragons were coming. Sensors had detected 5 more stellar dragons emerging from the Crimson Nebula. They approached the station slowly, carefully, watching to see if weapons would be fired at them. No weapons were fired. Jin Woo had made sure of that. He had personally disabled every defensive system on the station. If we shoot at them, we prove that nothing has changed, he told his security teams. We prove that we are still the same species that drove them away 20,000 years ago. So we do not shoot, we wait, and we hope. The 5 dragons circled the station for hours, keeping their distance. They were each slightly different from Vexthor. One had scales that looked like silver instead of gold. Another had 4 wings instead of 2. A third was smaller but moved with incredible speed. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Station personnel watched nervously. Some aliens had left on the first available transport ships, too frightened to stay even though the dragons had not attacked. Others remained, curious to see what would happen next. The observation gallery had been repaired, with new windows installed to replace the ones that Vexthor had broken. It was full of people waiting and watching. Hana sat in a chair by the window, drawing pictures with her crayons. She had drawn Vexthor from memory, showing him with colors that made him look friendly rather than scary. Her father sat beside her, one hand resting protectively on her shoulder. "Do you think Vexthor will come back?" Hana asked. "I do not know, sweetheart," Taehyun replied honestly. "But I think he will. I think he wants to see you again." As if summoned by her words, space began to tear open. The now familiar spatial rift appeared, and Vexthor emerged through it. But he was not alone. Another dragon came with him, the silver-scaled one they had seen earlier. Together they approached the station. Hana jumped up from her chair. "He came back. Papa, Vexthor came back. And he brought a friend." The 2 dragons positioned themselves outside the observation gallery's windows. Vexthor's companion was slightly smaller than him, with scales that reflected light like mirrors. Where Vexthor's eyes burned with orange and gold, this dragon's eyes were silver-blue, like ice under starlight. Hana pressed her hands against the window. "Hello, Vexthor." "Hello, other dragon. My name is Hana. What is your name?" The silver dragon made a sound similar to Vexthor's rumbling, but higher in pitch. Somehow Hana understood. "Seira," Hana said, trying out the name. "Is that right? Are you a girl dragon?" The silver dragon Seira made another sound that seemed like agreement. She moved closer to the window, studying Hana with careful attention. Her eyes showed the same wariness that Vexthor's had shown at first. The same ancient distrust, but Hana only smiled and waved. "You are very beautiful, Seira. I have never seen silver scales before. They are like moonlight." The dragon's expression seemed to soften slightly. She looked at Vexthor, who made a low rumbling sound. Whatever they were communicating, it seemed to be about Hana. Over the next hour, the other 3 dragons also approached. Each one came close enough to see Hana through the windows, but kept a safe distance. They watched her draw pictures, listened to her talk, observed how the other beings in the gallery treated her. They were testing, evaluating, trying to understand if this small human was truly different or if it was some kind of trick. Hana talked to all of them. She asked their names and tried to remember how their different rumbling sounds felt. She told them about Earth, about rain and trees and oceans. She told them about her mother, about missing her, about how space was big and beautiful but sometimes lonely. The dragons listened, and slowly, gradually, they began to respond, not with words that the translation devices could interpret, but with sounds and movements that conveyed meaning. They were cautious, but they were trying. For the first time in 20,000 years, dragons were attempting to communicate peacefully with other beings. Scholar Mirai watched everything with tears in her old eyes. "This is how it was," she whispered. "This is how it used to be before the war, before we ruined everything." The Galactic Council was forced to hold an emergency meeting. With 6 dragons now in the vicinity of Station Nexus 7, they could not ignore the situation. Representatives from all the major civilizations gathered to discuss what it meant. Ambassador Krell stood at the council table, his quills pressed flat against his body in a gesture of humility. "I was wrong," he announced. "We were all wrong. Stellar dragons are not mindless beasts. They are intelligent beings who remember the war we started. They have been waiting for us to change, and we never did. Until the humans came. Representative Thess projected her thoughts through her crystal body. Humanity has no knowledge of the ancient war. They see the dragons as we should have seen them all along, as potential partners and allies, not as threats to be destroyed. A delegate from the aquatic Merva species spoke up, its voice bubbling through the water of its suit. But humanity is young. They are inexperienced. How can we trust them to mediate between us and the dragons? Because they have already succeeded where we all failed, said Mireille. She had been invited to address the council as an expert on ancient history. That child formed a bond with Vexthor in minutes. She did what our greatest diplomats could not do in millennia. She offered kindness without expecting anything in return. That is why the dragons trust her. That is why they will trust other humans who follow her example. The council debated for hours. Some species were reluctant to give humanity such an important role. Others saw it as the only logical choice. Eventually, they reached a decision. Humanity would become the official liaison species between the Galactic Council and the stellar dragons. Humans would be trained as dragon ambassadors. They would facilitate communication and help rebuild the relationship that had been broken so long ago. It was an unprecedented decision. Never before had such a young species been given such an important responsibility. But these were unprecedented times. Taehyun was offered the position of Chief Dragon Ambassador. He would lead the human team responsible for establishing diplomatic protocols with the dragons. It was a huge job, one that would change his life completely. He would need to travel frequently between Earth and various dragon territories. He would need to learn everything possible about dragon culture and communication. I accept, Taehyun said when the council made the offer, but only if my daughter can be part of the program. She understands the dragons in a way that adults do not. We need her insight, the council agreed. Hana would become the youngest diplomat in galactic history. Special arrangements were made for her education and training. She would learn about different species and cultures while continuing to develop her unique ability to connect with dragons. Jinwoo also volunteered to join the Dragon Ambassador program. His security expertise would be valuable for protecting human diplomats working in potentially dangerous situations. But more than that, he had seen what Hana accomplished, and he wanted to be part of building this new future. Over the following weeks, more dragons appeared. They came one by one or in small groups drawn by the news that something had changed. Each one wanted to see the human child who showed kindness to Vexthor. Each one wanted to know if the galaxy had truly become a safer place for them. Hana met them all. She learned their names, or at least her best interpretation of their names. She drew pictures for them. She told them stories. And slowly, carefully, the dragons began to open up. They shared their own stories, their own losses, their own hope that maybe the ancient wounds could finally heal. The Galactic Council established the Crimson Nebula as a protected dragon territory. No mining would be allowed there. No military ships could enter without permission. It would be a safe haven where dragons could live without fear. In exchange, the dragons agreed to share some of their knowledge and abilities with the galaxy's civilizations. They could teach people about spatial travel, about energy manipulation, about things that science had not yet discovered. They could help explore dangerous regions of space where normal ships could not go. They could be partners again, the way they had been so long ago. It took time. Trust that had been broken over millennia could not be rebuilt in